The Bible is more than a single book. It's a collection of 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry written by dozens of different authors over thousands of years that all come together to tell one big story. It's a bigger story than you can even imagine. It's a big story about a really big God and what He did to rescue us. It shows us who we are and what we were created to do. Discover the story that shows you the character of God.
All right, everybody say creation. Hey, this is the big idea this month. I'm really kind of sad because this is our last week talking about creation. Obviously, we talk about creation a lot, but this is our last week with this being our big idea. So just repeat this after me. Everybody say, God made the world and everything in it. And man, I hope you guys have enjoyed this month as we talked about it. I know I have. This is something I think is so important because we said this the very first week. How we view creation affects how we view ourselves. It affects how we view the people next to us. It affects how we love other people like Jesus loved them. So it's really important. Now, just kind of a review. If you haven't been here, maybe it's your first time here in Studio 45. One, I'm glad you're here. We love to have fun. We love to have fun just like we did with you guys kind of doing more of the stuff. A lot of our games we do by grade or by group because we say this all the time. In a theater, you watch a movie, but in a studio, you... What we mean by make a movie, we don't mean literally make a movie, although you can. There's an app back there, you can make a movie. What we mean is as a 4th and 5th grader, we believe that you guys are getting old enough to where you can understand church is not just something you come and consume. Listen, Mr. Jesse gets to work with kids, but I also get to work with adults. And sometimes I'll talk to adults, and those adults still think that church is just something that they consume. Oh, I didn't really like worship today. I didn't get much out of the message today. Listen, church is not just something for consumption. This is not the Jesse show. The church is something you get to contribute to. It's something you get to be a part of. God is inviting you into His story that He is telling through the church, and this is really exciting. So we've been talking about creation. Just some review, okay? The first day of creation. We talked about this very first week of August. We said on day 1, God made light and God made dark. He just spoke it and it was amazing. Day 2, God separated the sky and the water is what we read in the book of Genesis. Day 3, we learned how God causes the water to flow to one place and dry ground appeared for the first time. So we have dry ground. God creates land. And then specifically we learned how God made the plants to produce the same kind after themselves. So they all had seeds to reproduce their own plants. On day 4, we learned how God created the heavens. He made the sun, the moon, the stars. It's really fascinating. Mr. Jesse loves science. I love to study science. I love to study how God made the world to work. And it is so fascinating to study the stars and the universe that we can see around us. Day 5, we talked about how God made the fish and the birds, right? And it was kind of cool because we talked about there's a lot of poetry in the story of creation. And so day 2, God creates the sky and the water. And then day 5, God creates the birds, the fish. It's really cool. And then day 6, we talked about how God created all of the land animals. So any land animal you can imagine, God had a hand in creating them. And He spoke design into them and He formed them from the ground is what Scripture says. And then we kind of stopped. Remember the first week we stopped and we said, hey, we're going to come back to this because we wanted to spend an entire week talking about how you and me and the person next to you and your grandma and your grandpa and that kid at school that you don't really like or that kid at school that doesn't seem to fit in or that kid at school is a little mean. All of those people are made in the image of... So important. It's so important we understand that. When you look at somebody, and this is what's so cool. We all look a little bit different, and we're all a shaded view of our heavenly Creator. And you look at the diversity we have in this room, that's because our God is a huge, big God, and He made you. He has a plan for you. Now, I know I've been around 4th and 5th graders for a while, okay? And when we say, everybody say, God created the world and everything in it. There's a question that I get sometimes. And it's like, well, Jesse, if God created the world, why are there bad things in our world? Why did my grandma have to get sick? Why did my friend have to move away? Why are there bad things? Why is there death? Why do roses have thorns, right? All this stuff. And so last week we talked about how the world originally was perfect, wasn't it? But guys, this is so important. Any loving relationship always has a choice. When I asked my wife to marry me, do you know what I said? I said, will you marry me? I didn't walk up to Sarah and say, you will marry me. Okay, that would be creepy. She would have said no, right? But it's a loving relationship, so what did I do? I asked the question. And here's the thing, God doesn't force anybody to be in a relationship with them. He created a perfect world, but he gave Adam and Eve a choice. And they chose to disobey God. And when they did, our world was broken. And guys, here's the thing. I don't know how much Mr. Cody talked about this last week, but I imagine the world that we look at looked a lot different. Did you know before the flood that the Bible tells us that animals were plant eaters? They ate plants. Sometimes you'll hear somebody say, oh, well, if an animal has sharp teeth, that means it eats meat. Well, that's sort of true. Did you know the panda has sharp teeth and all it eats is bamboo? Did you know that? Yeah. But here's the deal. The point is, all animals used to be vegetarians before the fall, and then guess what happened? The world was broken, and now You've got, the lamb is afraid of the lion. It's like, I don't want to hang out with a lion. You don't put a lion and a lamb next to each other. But what we're talking about this week, the big question of what are we going to talk about as we wrap up creation is so important, because I'm going to tell you how even though we have a broken world, there's actually a story in the Bible. It's a story you're probably familiar with. It's a story of Noah's Ark. And Noah's Ark is going to help us understand. Wow, that was impressive. Noah's Ark is going to help us understand that one day God is going to make things right. And in fact, Scripture would say one day the lion will be able to lie next to the lamb and it won't have anything to worry about. So that's our story. Everybody say, Book of Genesis. I'm going to fly through this because you guys probably know some of this story. Maybe you've heard it. In fact, my guess is I've talked to a lot of 4th and 5th graders. Even if you haven't come to church very much, my guess is you have probably heard the story of Noah's Ark. And when I say Noah's Ark, you probably picture something like this. Everybody say, aw. Oh, it's so sweet, the little birds and the stuff, and the monkey, right? And you look at it and you say, oh, that's sweet. But guys, here's the deal. I remember being a 4th grader. I remember being a 5th grader. And I remember reading the story for myself. I'd go home and I'd open the book of Genesis and I would read it. And the story of Genesis is not this. This might help a baby understand. This might help a toddler understand. But as a 4th or 5th grader, you understand when you read the story of Noah, the story of Noah is pretty heartbreaking. I mean, yes, there was a boat, but there was a lot of people that weren't on that boat. And so when you read this story, I know as a 4th or 5th grader, it caused a lot of questions for me, right? We go back to the story of creation. You say creation. Everybody say creation. Okay, God made the world, but then God flooded the world, right? I mean, that's kind of hard for us to understand. But I want you to read this. This is in the book of Genesis. Everybody say Genesis. Chapter 6, and man, read this, because this, I think, hopefully, when you read this, man, just listen to the emotion in this verse. The Lord saw how bad the sins of everyone on earth had become. They only thought about evil things. The Lord was very sad that he had made human beings on the earth. And watch this. His heart was filled with pain. God created the world, but the world was broken, not just broken, it was broken in such a way that people were hurting each other. There were children, I imagine, being hurt or taken advantage of. There's all kinds of pain in the world, and it broke God's heart. You think about God. God created the entire world. When you read that, you read so much strength, because there is strength in that. But man, when you read that God's heart was broken, his heart was filled with pain. Does that show you that God was very, very sad? And this is a sad story. The earth was very sinful. I'm going to skip down to verse 11. The earth was very sinful in God's eyes. It was full of people who did mean, again, see, there's mean and harmful things. And God saw how sinful the earth had become. All of his people were living very sinful lives. So God said to Noah, earlier in the chapter 6, it says Noah found favor with God. It doesn't mean Noah was perfect. Noah wasn't a perfect guy. In fact, you can read the book of Genesis, you'll find out Noah was not perfect. But Noah tried to follow God. And here's what God said to Noah. I'm going to put an end to everyone. They have filled the earth with their harmful acts. I'm going to destroy them in the earth. So make yourself an ark out of cypress wood. Make rooms in it, cover it with tar inside and out. Now really focus here. I want you to really pay attention. I'm going to skip to chapter 7. Noah was 600 years old. Whoa, that's old. When the flood came on the earth, he and his sons entered the ark. His wife and his sons' wives went with him. They entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. I really want you to picture what it would have been like. to have been there and to see a giant ark and to step on that ark as Noah or as one of his 3 sons, right? Shem, Ham, or Japheth, right? You walk on that boat with your wife and you get on that boat and the door behind you closes and you hear that first thunderclap. I mean, can you see the rain? Can you picture the rain? The Bible tells us in the book of Genesis, it says it was the 17th day of the 2nd month of the year, and on that day, all of the springs at the bottom of the ocean burst open. And God opened the windows of the sky, and rain fell on the earth for 40 days and for 40 nights. Everybody say, whoa! For 40 days, the flood kept coming on the earth. And as the waters rose higher, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose higher and higher on the earth, and the ark floated on the water. And the waters rose on the earth until all of the high mountains under their entire sky were covered. The water continued to rise until it covered the mountains by more than 20 feet. Noah and his family are on the ark. God brought the animals of all their different kinds to the ark, and they get on the ark, and it starts to rain, and they are on this boat for over a year. 40 days and 40 nights is how long it rained, but they had to stay on this boat as the water covered the entire earth. And imagine as you're Noah and you're looking out the window, eventually the rain stops, but you're looking at a world that it no longer looks the same. It looks much different than the one you remember, because that sea is completely empty, and it is you on a boat with your family and with the animals of the earth. And there was creatures there was creatures in the water, right? God didn't have to have Noah bring, it says, all the land animals. He didn't bring a whale on the ark. He didn't need to. But all of the animals that were land dwelling were on the ark with Noah. Noah's on the ark, and eventually it gets to a point where he starts releasing birds, and he tries to see, okay, has the water come down enough? Has the water come down enough? And this is in Genesis chapter 7. It says, for 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth. I read that. Genesis chapter 8. It says it was the first day, the first month of Noah's 601st year. How old was he when he got on the ark? 600. He was on the boat for more than a year. The water on the earth had dried up. And then Noah removed the covering from the ark, and he saw that the surface of the ground was dry. And by the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was completely dry. So eventually, the water goes down, and Noah rests. The ark comes to rest on a mountain. This is actually Mount Ararat. The Bible doesn't tell us where. It tells us it was in the mountain range of Ararat. It doesn't give us the exact mountain. This is the mountain that the mountain range is named after. Some people think it's there. Some people think it's elsewhere. Some people think that Noah probably tore the ark apart and used the wood for other stuff. I don't really know. We haven't found it. But the point is, it landed in an actual place. And after a long time, Noah's able to get off and set his feet on solid ground again. And God speaks to Noah. This is so cool. God speaks to Noah and to his sons who are with him. He said, I'm making my covenant with you, with all your children who will be born after you. I'm making it with every living creature that was with you on the ark. So if God's making it with a covenant, making a covenant with Noah and his sons, and Noah are the only people on the planet, does that mean that he made it with you too? Yes, God made this covenant with everyone. He made it with you. He says, I'm making my covenant with the birds, the livestock, and the wild animals. I'm making it with all the creatures that came out of the ark with you. In fact, I'm making it with every living thing on earth. Here is my covenant I'm making with you. The waters of a flood will never again destroy all life. A flood will never again destroy the earth. My covenant is between me and you and every living creature. It is a covenant for all time to come. And here is the sign of the covenant I'm making. I have put my rainbow in the clouds. It will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Sometimes when I bring clouds over the earth, a rainbow will appear in them. And then I will remember my covenant between me and you and every living creature. The waters will never again become a flood to destroy all life. And he doesn't say there won't ever be a flood again. There's local floods, but there's never going to be a flood to cover the whole earth again. And the symbol he gave us for that was a rainbow. It's funny, a lot of people, Skittles uses, taste the rainbow, right? A lot of people try to use the rainbow for other things, but the truth is the rainbow is God's symbol. He created it. He created it to represent something very, very important. He created it to represent the fact that he would never again flood the earth. Now, this is an amazing story. I love the story of Noah, but I want to talk about you and me in 2023, okay? Because the truth is, almost all the time, when Mr. Jesse talks to somebody who has trouble believing in God, it comes down to, well, Mr. Jesse, I don't understand why bad things happen to good people. And Mr. Jesse, I understand where that question comes from, but can I tell you, I think that question misses something really, really important. And that's where the brokenness is. Remember how we showed that picture of the world being broken before? The truth is the world is broken. And the world is still broken. No, when God flooded the earth, he got rid of a lot of the evil that was around. But the truth is, there is still evil in this world. Now, God has a plan to fix it totally. But before God does that, he has an offer on the table to fix it right here. See, if you want to know where the world is the most broken, can I tell you? It's right here. Because I'm broken. I do things I don't want to do. And I don't do the things that I know I should do. And because of that, there's a brokenness in me that I can't fix on my own. Now, here's the good news. God's not going to flood the earth ever again. But he sent Jesus so that you and I could be made right. See, Jesus lived the perfect life I couldn't, and he lived the perfect life you couldn't. Then he laid that life down on a cross. And because he did that, you and I can have a relationship with God. He made a way. Now, the book of Matthew tells us, Jesus says this. He says, the book of Matthew says this. He says, no one knows about the day or the hour. The Son does not know. Only the Father knows. Remember how it was the days of Noah. It will be the same when the Son of Man comes. And the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking. They were getting married. They were giving their daughters to be married. They did all those things right up to the day Noah entered the ark. They knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them away. That is how it'll be when the Son of Man comes. Guys, here's the deal. God is going to make everything right again. And when he does, Jesus is going to come back. Your parents just got done learning about this. And if you have Jesus as your best friend, he will take you to heaven with him to spend eternity with him. And that is wonderful. But guys, guess what? Before he does that, he wants to make you right here by helping you and by you accepting Jesus Christ as your best friend. And that is why I love the story of Noah. Now, here's the deal. I'm out of time. We've been talking about the big idea of creation. Everybody say creation. Hey, just repeat this after me. Everybody say God made the world and everything in it. Guys, I think this story is so important because one, I want us to understand that God has a plan. Everybody say God has a plan to make things right again. Yeah, God is going to make things right. Is the world broken? Yes, but God has a plan, just like he did with Noah, to make things right. And here's the deal. He'll provide at the right time. He'll provide at the right time, just like he did with Noah. He brought the animals to Noah. He gave Noah the plan to build the boat. But what is important for us to understand is God does have a plan to make things right. Now, here's the deal. As we talk about creation, remember, I talked about this the very first week, and like I said, I am running out of time, but this is important because I know so many of you guys are going back to school, and you might hear when you go back to school that, hey, you're not really created, that God doesn't have a plan for you. In fact, we don't even think there is a God. And remember how I showed you this picture the very first week? Remember I showed you this picture and I said, who's right? Does anybody know? One person says it's a 6, one person says it's a 9. See, we don't know who's right, but how would we know who is right? Yeah, we would have to ask the person who did what? Who put it there? We'd have to ask the person who created it. Hey, did you put a 6 there or did you put a 9 there? And guys, the reason why I showed you that picture is because your perspective on the world will change how you see everything. It's so important. Your perspective. If you're on this side, it looked like a 9. If you're on this side, it looked like a 6. But your perspective will change everything. And the only way to know what is true is to ask the person who is there. Hey guys, here's the thing. Jesus claimed to be a person that was there. He claimed to be God, and then he proved it by rising from the dead. And so you can have any kind of worldview you want, but really it comes down to, is there a God or is there not a God? And guys, depending on where you're standing, the world will look completely different. Depending on where you're standing, if you believe there's a God, you'll look at creation, you'll look at the world around you, and you say, God made that. If you look at the story of Noah's Ark, right, you'll look at that and you'll say, wow, God had a plan to make things right. Or you might look at the Bible, right? If you believe there's a God, you'll look at the Bible and you'll say, the Bible is is God's word. It tells me about history. It tells me about the world. But again, if you don't believe there's a God, you'll say, oh, there is no creation, just happened over thousands and millions of years. Noah's Ark is just a myth. The Bible, you can't trust the Bible. See, depends on where you're standing. And all I'm asking is as you go into school and as you go through your lives and as you go through NewSpring and you become a middle schooler and high school, I just want you to remember that everybody has a worldview. I have a worldview. I believe that there is a God. Why? Because Jesus saved me and he's my best friend. And that is, when I get up on stage, I'm talking to you from my worldview. And so you'll have constantly people come from different perspectives and they will tell you one thing or another. Like for instance, how you look at things, like the fossil record, right? When you look at the fossil record, you think about the fossil record, it's amazing. We see fossils all over the world. There are some people, you have to hit the one in between, John, sorry. There's some people that look at the fossil record and they see, oh, it took millions of years for the fossil record to appear. It took millions of years. There's other people that look at it and say, no, you know what? I think that's actually evidence of a great, great flood. And it could be. I definitely believe it is. But it's because of my worldview. So I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and pray. And I'm going to pray that you and I would remember that how we see the world. If we see the world as God made it, everybody say, God made the world and everything in it. It can drastically change how we see each other, how we see the people that we go to school with, how we see the people in our family. So we're going to pray. I'd like to pray for you, and then I'll let you go. God, I just pray that everyone in this room would realize how magnificently created they are and that they were created by you. Lord, help us to remember that. Help us to live in that. Help us to remember that you have a plan to make things right. And all God's children said,